Welcome everybody to Beyond the Cart. I am your host, Kyle Hamer, and in this week's episode, I'm excited because we get to talk about the coolest and sexiest part of e-commerce. It's not marketing, no, it is logistics. Yes, absolutely. This can definitely be something that makes or breaks your profit margin, right? And particularly in today's episode, we want to talk about big and bulky products. So I'm excited to have on the show Robert Khachatryan. And Robert, it's so good to have you here, man. And it's good to connect. And I'm excited you're here.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Very excited.
Awesome. Well, again, I mean, I kind of led into it. Like, this is not these considered like the sexiest, coolest part of selling in e-commerce, but I would argue it is definitely one of the most important because so much of your per unit margin, your just profitability in general is going to be tied to your logistics. It's tied to getting that product to your customer. And that's it's even more of a challenge historically with big and bulky products, right? And then even taking them global, right? Like that becomes even a whole other layer of challenge within that space. So I'm excited to kind of get your take on it. But before we dig into like the logistics of it, I mean, what first pulled you into the world of say, international shipping and fulfillment for e-commerce as a whole?
Yeah, so I mean, I got into international precisely from the perspective of e-commerce and selling big and bulky. I was trying to actually import and distribute bulky items, furniture specifically, and couldn't figure out the logistics. It just didn't make any sense, the cost of it.
Mhm.
So my grand idea was I'm gonna go work for a logistics company and figure it out. But like most people in logistics got sucked into it full time and forgot all about
Right.
selling products. So that's been my sort of entry into the world of logistics. And then over the years we worked with a lot of brands that sell bulky items, and it's all been manual, sort of your traditional situation where a brand gets a inquiry from an overseas buyer asking to ship to whatever, like an American brand gets contacted by an Australian customer. The brand would contact us to get a quote. It'd take like a week to get a quote back to the buyer in Australia, who by the time, most of the time, has basically moved on, right? So, and this happened enough times that we realized, okay, maybe this is something we should try to solve and automate and build, for shopping carts. And that's kind of what got us into it. And after a couple of years of development, we launched the solution a couple of months ago, and just have seen tremendous impact and a lot of good feedback.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool because it's like most people shy away from big and bulky, right? Like don't really want to do that. That seems like too much risk and maybe too much cost structure associated with it. Where and obviously you said that you were sort of doing furniture, but where did you like have that aha moment of sort of seeing the opportunities? And like most people see like friction, they're like, don't go there. You're like, there's actually opportunity here. What was that sort of light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, so I think the challenge for us was all the quoting, right? Because it was manual. So
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the biggest customers we had at the time were arcade game
Yeah.
manufacturers and sellers. And if you're selling an arcade game, you can't ship that with like UPS or FedEx, right? And they sell it
Right.
domestically. Typically, it's free shipping, or they subsidize shipping. So
Right.
what a typical brand does, they'll budget like $500 to ship like a large item, and then they would
Mm-hmm.
open, like, they bake it into the cost of goods or the price of goods, and then offer free shipping. But every time you get an international buyer, now you gotta go email a freight forwarder, get a quote, move all this information back and forth. It's very manual. So for us on the freight forwarding side, we were getting all these inquiries from our customers, and the conversion rate was extremely low because
Mm.
it took 2-3 days to quote. By the time you get back to a an online buyer, like you don't know this buyer, right? It's just a
Sure.
random inquiry, so the conversion rate is already low to begin with. Now you got to do all this work for 2 3 days. uh, you're postponing the decision to purchase for this person, and therefore your conversion
Sure.
drops even lower, right? And now you got to do all this manual work. So on our end, we were quoting this, and we're like, okay, we need to automate the quoting first of all, because the conversion rate is low. We can't be so sort of labor intensive. So then we got into automating the quoting, into like international quoting, right? And
Mm-hmm.
from there on, we're like, okay, so now our customers, which is the brand or the merchant, still has to email us for a quote. So why don't we connect to the shopping cart? And if a customer comes on from another country, why don't we just display the rate instantly to them on the shopping cart? And that was the progression of the development. And then we got into, obviously, the next thing that follows is, okay, how do you do with taxes? How do you do with duties? How do you do with
Mm.
customs clearance? And started building on top of that initial setup. And we're still
So
building.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So you would say sort of the D2C logistics hurdles, where with big and bulky was like actually one, um, like getting the quotes in a timely enough manner, right? And then layering in all of the other kind of challenges with that, taxes and all the other associated costs that are growing into that, right? And so that was your challenge essentially, is it's taking too much time, right? It was, then you were losing sales over that in that process, right? um
Yeah, as a
so
logistics provider, yeah, that's the problem, right? But then our
yeah,
customers are losing the sales, and a lot of times they just wouldn't even pursue these opportunities, because
right,
of all the
yeah,
work involved. Yeah.
for sure. So then what was the turning point, that kind of caused you to go like, there's a solution for this, and kind of walking us through what you're doing now to kind of solve those problems.
Yeah, so I think the turning point was just it wasn't so much like a point we reached where it was like a turning point. It was more of we constantly kept seeing this. Like we're on our end, we're
Mm-hmm.
fighting the conversion, right? So we go to our customers and like, hey, we quoted you 100 shipments, you only shipped 10, right? So how come? And
Mm-hmm.
they were like, well, these are online customers, we don't know them, they are interested, we quote it, and they don't want to buy it because it took a week
Mm-hmm.
to get back to them, they found something else
Sure.
locally, etc., etc. So by solving our conversion problem, we were solving their conversion problem. And it's not
Yep.
so much that we're solving the conversion problem, is that we're reducing the manual work that you would need to do. So you essentially don't care if your conversion is low on the international front. If you have 10 customers
Mm-hmm.
from, let's say, UK trying to buy your product that you sell in the United States, if only one of them buys, it's still one sale that you wouldn't have. Now we're talking about big and bulky,
Mm-hmm.
expensive, so revenue-wise, it's worth it. But if you have to do 10 manual quotes to do it, that's a lot of work, and most
Sure.
brands just don't do it. So by automating it, we're basically saying it doesn't matter if the conversion rate is low, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still serve the customer, and you don't lose the sale. And
Right.
then there's something to be said, obviously, if a customer is on your website trying to check out, uh, if you serve them the rate on the spot, if you allow them to purchase, your conversion rate is much, much higher than relying on the customer to email you for you to get back to them days later with a
For sure.
manual quote, right? That's just a whole different conversion game there.
Yeah, so it was almost that automation process, right? Where you could start to delivering almost sort of real-time quotes for big and bulky that wasn't really, the standard operating procedure in the past,
Yeah,
right? That was the breakthrough moment for you to kind of like, we could automate this.
yeah. I mean, it still doesn't exist. It's just, as far as we know, we're the only ones who've solved this, at least internationally. We're the only ones, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
there's a few other solutions for domestic sales. So if you sell large items that
Mm-hmm.
require freight delivery, not like parcel, there's some solutions out there that exist. So you
Mm-hmm.
could actually handle, you could calculate shipping on the shopping cart level instantly. But for international, it's just
Yeah.
really, most brands just don't sell international if your product is big and bulky.
Right, right, and yeah, they just choose not to do it because like logistics usually hides in the background, right? And not like we kind of talked about at the beginning, but it does shape your brand trust. And so being able to deliver a quote and deliver this in a quick way, I think helps to solidify your brand. Um, what so let's kind of dive into a little bit more. So what are some of the hidden impacts of bulky items shipping internationally? It's there's shipping costs and margins associated with it. So it's like where does that kind of break down?
Yeah, it's definitely a completely different ball game compared to regular, D2C e-commerce because um, parcel service is very mature. Obviously, we all use it, we all get it. Many of us multiple
Mm-hmm.
times a day. So the cost is considerably lower in relationship to the cost of goods or the merchandise value, right? Whereas anything that requires international freight is very expensive. So, if you sell a $10,000 item, uh, let's say an arcade game or a safe or an exercise equipment, right? Exercise machine. The transportation cost of shipping it from one country to another could be upwards of like 20% of the merchandise value, right? So this is very costly. Mistakes are generally very costly, right? So if something goes wrong, you might lose all your profit.
Right.
So and it's typically expensive items, so they require commercial customs clearance. The duty and taxes are pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be basically you want it to be as smooth as possible and as um, sort of free of mistakes and possibility of things going wrong as possible. And that's those are the big challenges of why a lot of brands shy away from it. And
Right.
typically, if you're doing well in your domestic market, you want to expand, the traditional method is you go find a distributor or you go
Sure.
open a branch or you set up your own logistics. That's like
Mhm.
that's a very complicated and very expensive endeavor, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
if you sell smaller items, you don't have to do that. At least in the beginning, you can just enable UPS or a FedEx integration on your Shopify account or WooCommerce or whatever, and you can start selling internationally. There are companies like Zonos that would handle your
Mm-hmm.
taxation and duty calculation. So
Mm-hmm.
this solution exists if you sell smaller items, but if you're selling larger, expensive items, your only option until now was you either don't sell or you go find a
Mm-hmm.
distributor or you go set up
All right.
shop in the target country, right? So that's basically our goal was to enable brands to sell internationally without having to do all of that, right? Because that's just a very expensive proposition. You know?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What would you say are sort of the biggest cost levers for improving margins on oversized items that are shipping internationally? Is there anything like a brand can do to sort of like, hey, we can streamline other than using your service, obviously? But is there anything
Yeah.
that they could do on their side to kind of optimize costs?
Well, absolutely, yeah. So we do a lot of this kind of work with our customers, which is basically help them with package design, right? So,
Good
um,
call.
like a lot of the listeners who ship smaller items would probably know like the oversized rules for UPS and FedEx, the girth and
Mhm.
longest size and things like that. So, if you go above a certain length, you get hit with oversized fee or overweight fee and things like that. For bulky items, a lot of what we're running into is you're delivering something very big to a residence typically, right? And it
Mhm.
needs to come off the truck and into the house. So a lot of times, if it doesn't fit on a lift gate, you need like it complicates things exponentially, right? So, for example, um, something that's you know we handle a lot of health equipment.
Mhm.
Think of cold plunges and saunas and things like that. So
Yeah.
as a plunge could be under 2 meters long or over 2 meters long, right? If it's over
Mhm.
2 meters, now all of a sudden you need a crane to lower it to the ground. That makes your
Yeah.
delivery like $500 higher, and that's just like
Yeah.
that. That could be the reason why you can't compete. Whereas
Sure.
another brand might have the package under 2 meters, and that's just significantly cheaper to handle. So a lot of times we'll work with brands to redesign the packaging, redesign how the stuff is palletized, or we'll work with ways to minimize damages. So a lot of the sort of value at work goes into this kind of optimization, which results in significantly cheaper rates, and therefore obviously you're more competitive and your conversion rate goes up.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. So kind of what you're helping to unlock is essentially that global e-commerce expansion, right? Your goal is to kind of lower the barriers and ship direct. So like walk us through some of that, like the goal or sort of some of the outcomes that you've maybe seen. Is there like a recent example, maybe, or case study that you can off the top of your head go, yeah, we did this for a client, it unlocked this for their global expansion? That'd be a cool story.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the companies we're working with now, they're in onboarding stage. They're not an active client yet, but it's a really good example. So I'll talk about that one. This is a company that sells exercise equipment, and they are celebrity endorsed. So they have a global
Nice.
celebrity who just signed on, and the celebrity talks about this product on social media, right? And if you're spending marketing dollars on social media, you obviously have a lot of control on where your ads are displayed, which countries they're served in, and you can limit the sort of the scope. When you have a celebrity endorsement, um, celebrities by design have followers everywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if a celebrity tags your product, and all of a sudden, you're getting all this traffic from Europe, and you're in
Right.
US,
Yeah.
you're like, you haven't spent any money to get in traffic in Europe, but you get all this traffic, and they all come to your website, they all go on your shopping cart, and as soon as they enter their location, you say, sorry, we don't ship to your country, right?
Yep. You're out of
So
luck.
you're out of luck. So 90% of it, typically they just move on. They're like, oh,
Yep.
too bad I can't buy this product, right? The 10% will actually reach out. They'll DM you, they'll message you, and they'll email you, and they'll say, hey, I'm in France, like, how do I buy your product, right? And then you gotta
Mm-hmm.
go through this manual coding process and all that. So this brand we're working with is exactly that. We talk to them, and they're like, hey, we just signed on like a celebrity endorser, and now we're getting all this traffic spike in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what can you do, right? And we're like, well, what we can do is we can enable everybody in Europe to buy your product, and without
Right.
you having to have any distribution there, without you having to register and collect and pay taxes in Europe, right? So
Mm-hmm.
uh, for the brand, there's no sort of exposure. It's not a lot of lift to all of a
Right.
sudden start selling in Europe. So that's and it's and talking to the owners and the executives of the brand, they're like, yeah, we thought expansion to Europe is like the next big thing, and we were planning to do it in maybe late 2026, maybe
Mm-hmm.
2027, when we have resources for it. Like, we had no idea we could actually start selling there, because we didn't know, like, all right, FedEx can handle our stuff, it's too big, right? It's like a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
400-pound machine. It's like we had
For
no
sure.
idea we could actually start selling basically tomorrow.
Amazing. So, follow up question on that. VAT, are you guys handling VAT for that? Or are you referring that out to a different service, or how are you handling that process?
No, so we are handling that in house, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the existing services, they're not geared towards high value items. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, some of the existing solutions out there, they charge upwards of, like, I think 10%, typically 5 to 10% to handle VAT. Um, Now, the problem with big and bulky, expensive items is VAT is very high, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
our average transaction size, like gross merchandise value wise, is like 10,000 or more, or 7,000 or more.
Sure.
So the VAT in Europe is 20% of that, right? So you're talking
Yeah,
about
it's a
a
big hit.
$2,000 or a $1,500 VAT bill, on top of which you have to pay, or your customer has to pay 5 to 10% to manage it. Now that's
Mhm.
too high, right? That's not
Yeah, it's a
designed
lot.
for this kind of. And a lot of the e-commerce, international e-commerce customs clearances, they go under de minimis rules. So they're treated differently versus high value
Mhm.
stuff, which is not. It's commercial. It's subject to full taxation, to full duty payments, right? So uh, most of these existing services are not designed to handle commercial customs clearance. We, on the other hand, we have a global network of customs brokers. We've been doing this for 20 years, right? So
Amazing.
we had the network to be able to handle this, right? So uh, this is definitely a, it's an optional. It's not a, we don't do this across the board, but if the brand doesn't want to collect duty and
Hmm.
VAT in other countries, have to report it, have to pay it, have to reconcile it with CPAs and all that stuff. We basically handle it for them. And
That's awesome.
the way we do it on behalf of the buyer, right? So we tell the buyer in, say, UK, that look, if you purchase this item, you're going to pay the VAT and the duty, and it's going to be paid on your behalf to UK customs.
Hmm.
So the brand, the merchant, doesn't actually touch the duty and VAT, has no responsibility to, report it, and there has that doesn't need to register with the VAT and the EORI numbers and things like that in Europe. And so we make it really simple, unless the brand already has some kind of a setup and they basically want to handle that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, that's one of the bigger challenges I feel like for brands trying to expand internationally. Is like, oh, we got to go through uh, all of the craziness that's associated with that and setup and managing it, and yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare, and I can imagine it's only even more complicated with, you know, higher GMV products, you know, like you guys are handling. So I think that's cool that you're offering that solution. It allows you, I think, to essentially like allows brands to expand, right, and test the markets without over committing, right? Because it's like if they went into it and they hadn't tested it, right, like yeah, we're gonna do set up all the VAT ourselves, and we're gonna find our fulfillment directly that we're gonna maintain. That's a lot of cost without actually testing to whether or not that there's validity to the market with their product. And so leveraging your team and what you guys have built really does allow you to go, oh, like we can actually, like you said in like your case study example, we thought this is going to be like sometime in 2026, we'll get around to it, and literally we can get started, you know, within the onboarding period that you have with a
Yeah.
client, right? Like it's going to be a much shorter thing. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy
I think
because
that's cool.
like there's some brands think of it as, okay, let's test the waters without going and doing all that engagement, right? And some brands, uh, you know, it's actually it's very interesting. The logistics cost actually works out to do this permanently as well, right? Because
Mm,
it's not the obviously shipping a container of goods per unit is a lot cheaper than shipping individual units every time you sell. Like drop shipping is a
sure,
lot more expensive than bulk shipping. But
sure.
you have to keep in mind, it's you either work with a distributor, right, who has to make a
Hmm.
margin, right? So you have to sell wholesale, um,
Hmm.
which a lot of times is upwards of 50%, right? And then the other option is you do it yourself. You find your own 3PLs, your own fulfillment facilities. You have to register locally. It's exposure. You have to report taxes. You have to report VAT, right? And then most importantly, you have to inventory your stuff. You have to have inventory.
Hmm.
And if you're selling expensive, big and bulky items, that's a lot of cost to inventory product, right? So
Yeah.
when you factor all of that in, the cost of inventory, the cost of financing inventory, it actually makes sense. Maybe not like if it's a major market, at some point you graduate to that. But if it's not a major market for you, then it may be a very good permanent solution to just ship.
Yeah.
And because one key point is that we haven't touched on yet is in most of those cases we actually ship the product from the factory in Asia, right? So it could be
Oh
a
yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
it could be an Australian brand selling product to New Zealand. We don't ship it from their Australian inventory. We ship it from China, right? Or if it's a UK brand who wants to sell in the United States, we don't ship the product from their UK inventory where they've already spent the money to bring it in, pay duties and taxes. We actually ship it from their Chinese factory or from their Vietnamese factory directly to US, basically cutting out all the extra cost and all the extra duties and taxes and the complexity, right? So that there's a lot of opportunity to optimize. There's a lot of opportunity to
Hmm.
bypass sort of, you know, double payments of logistics cost and inventory cost, and a lot of other ways you save a lot of money doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, one other, so that leads me to kind of another question. While you mentioned that was, so how do you help brands operationally sort of stay resilient, when there's so many supply chain variables that are constantly changing? There's fuel surcharges and tariffs and all this other stuff that's happening, like it seems like all the time now. You have to be on it and kind of helping brands navigate that. What are some ways in which you're helping your clients do that?
Yeah, so we definitely, we have to be really, really good at sort of predicting what's going to happen at least over the next 30 days or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this e-commerce division of ours is one part of a bigger company. So we move a lot
Mm-hmm.
of freight globally. We move a lot of containers. We
Mm-hmm.
move a lot of air freight. So we have a lot of data and a lot of sort of uh, trends available. Like we have trends available to us to analyze and say, all right, what do we think is going to happen in the next 30 days, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and by doing that, we're basically taking on the risk. So if a customer of ours, sells a product that has, let's say, 2 weeks lead time,
Mm-hmm.
we will never go back and say, oh, by the way, your rate changed, right? Or your rate expired. So a product that's sold and the customer checks out and pays for it, that's the price that the merchant's going to pay to move it. Now, in the beginning, sometimes you might have incorrect data. A product may be heavier than they initially expected, or but we try to work through these corrections early on so that
Mm-hmm.
we have accurate data. We know exactly how much something weighs, what the dimensions are, so we don't run into unexpected corrections. But we understand this is sort of it's a stage you have to go through, so we're pretty flexible. But generally, we take on a lot of the risk of the supply chain related, be it disruptions or rate changes and things like that. And tariffs, as disruptive as they've been, um, typically, you do get a little bit of a notice period, so even though the American, you know, White House administration might announce new tariffs,
Mm-hmm.
it actually takes several weeks before they go into effect. There's a lot of
Sure.
background work that needs to be done for those to work. But it's been also a great sort of catalyst in a lot of cases. So, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the American brands we talk to come to us because they used to be able to sell to Canada and they no longer
Mm-hmm.
can, right? Because
Yeah.
you import your product to United States, it's subject to pretty severe tariffs, upwards of 50%. So now you've paid 50% tariff on your cost of goods. You can't compete with the Canadian importer anymore with your US
Mm-hmm.
inventory, right? Your product's already 50% more expensive than the
Right.
Canadian importer. So what they've in the past they used to ship to Canada from US. Now what they do is they basically enable our solution, and then when they sell in Canada, we ship from China directly to Canada, bypassing the United States tariffs, right? So that's
Nice.
allowed actually a lot of American brands to continue selling in Canada without having to, pay tariffs on that product.
Smart. That's solving the problem for your client. So that's awesome. A couple more questions. What Just kind of shifting this a little bit. What's one hard learned lesson that you've learned helping brands go global that you wish sort of every D2C operator knew?
It's the thing that we run into very often, our sales team runs into very often is a lot of brands, um, maybe rightfully so, think that it's a lot harder than it actually is, right? So you'll see
Very good.
brands that block international traffic, right? And it's
Sure.
like these people are coming to buy your product. Like, why would you do that, right?
Right.
So it's actually it's pretty easy to sell internationally, at least to some of the markets where it's more native, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
if you're an American brand, you should absolutely be selling to every major English-speaking country in the world, right? You don't have to redo your website. You don't have to adjust your language, right? It's very easy to enable it. And a lot of brands just don't think of it in those terms. It's more,
Mhm.
when you're talking about international expansions, they're all thinking, oh, we're going to go to trade shows, we're going to find partners, we're going to at some point expand. It's really not that far out. You can do it very quickly. You can be up and running in multiple countries in a matter of a couple of weeks, right? And that's just something I wish more brands knew and thought in those terms.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's very helpful because most of the times they don't. So like part of it's getting the word out there, be like, hey, you actually have this ability to expand, and it's not as hard as you might think that it could be. So I love it.
Yeah.
With that, like, where can listeners kind of go deeper with your work and learn more about you? How can you stay connected with you, Robert?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, obviously, just Google my name or search my name on LinkedIn, Robert
Mhm.
Khachatryan.
We'll
It's
make sure we can add that into the
yeah, it's
comments here in the show too.
yeah, because I imagine most people are not going to be able to spell it easily, but our website is a great place to start, freightright.com.
Yep.
There's a section on e-commerce there. You can get a lot of information there. You can schedule a consultation. You can talk to our guys, and you can contact me directly as well through the website. Um, and if any of the brands are interested to learn more about logistics in general and how we can support them outside of the e-commerce specifically, that's also a great place to explore. But yeah, freightright.com would be a great place to start.
Awesome. Well, this has been very, very cool. I've learned some cool stuff so that I probably would have honestly kind of just like, nah, I don't really ever want to think about bulk shipping internationally. It's probably not going to be worth my time and energy. But you have challenged that myth, and it's like good job. Like you broke my misconception about that. So
Mission
now I'm
accomplished.
like, oh, now I'm gonna eyeball that a little bit more. Like, how actually, where is there opportunity to do that, and then jump on a call with Freight Right so that they can make it happen.
Yeah, sounds good.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show and great stuff. And look forward to staying connected. Again, if you want to connect with Robert, you can hit him up on LinkedIn. It's freightright.com. And they are happy to help you get selling internationally. So, with that, Robert, thanks again for being on the show.